your YouTube account to this?
You did by the process of churches. It's here. It's,
Yeah, but you have to have access to the account to put the video in there, no?
Yes. So I mean, we have a. It's a good question actually. I'm figuring this out myself still.
Yeah,
So I'm not a pro.
it was interesting.
It is interesting. Like, there's some sort of login information I have for this website,
Mm.
and it seems to be already connected with YouTube. So there's nothing you have to do actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Now we're on. It's good to go.
It's working? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Let's do it. I'll show you where I'm at in active devotion.
Okay. Oh, wait, we don't have to bring the laptop? No? Oh. I feel like a caveman right now.
Oh.
Where is nectar devotion?
It's the one on the show.
This one? We're not here.
It's good to go.
Is it good?
Yeah, it's even better.
Let's try
Bro.
it. Oh, we're just starting.
Yeah, just everything. Here we go. Page 14, awareness of pure devotional service. And you can read as long as you like. And I usually take the opportunity to at least read 30 minutes or so.
Okay.
But it's usually till 4:30. Whatever you can do. If Cody comes, you guys can discuss.
Okay. Yeah.
Anything
So, no, I just have to read, right? And then when it is over, then how do I end it?
just I just say Hare Krishna.
And okay. Sure.
Do this here. When you end this, it'll give you the option end meeting for all.
Mm.
Do
Okay.
that. That'll end it on the computer too.
Okay.
That's good.
So when I press this, that option will come. Okay. 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 Hare Krishna. I start from here, right? Okay.
Please enjoy the nectar.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. The rareness of pure devotional service. In the preliminary phase of spiritual life, there are different kinds of austerities, penances, and similar processes for attaining self-realization. However, even if an executor of these processes is without any material desire, he still cannot achieve devotional service. And aspiring by oneself alone to achieve devotional service is also not very hopeful, because Krishna does not agree to award devotional service to merely anyone. Krishna can easily offer a person material happiness or even liberation, but he does not agree very easily to award a person engagement in his devotional service. Devotional service can in fact be attained only through the mercy of a pure devotee. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 19, 151, it is said, quote, by the mercy of the spiritual master, who is a pure devotee, and by the mercy of Krishna, one can achieve the platform of devotional service. There is no other way, end quote. The rarity of devotional service is also confirmed in the Tantra Sastra, where Lord Shiva says to Sati, my dear Sati, if one is a very fine philosopher, analyzing the different processes of knowledge, he can achieve liberation from the material entanglement. By performance of the ritualistic sacrifices recommended in the Vedas, one can be elevated to the platform of pious activities and thereby enjoy the material comforts of life to the fullest extent. But all such endeavors can hardly offer anyone devotional service to the Lord, not even if one tries for it by such processes for many thousands of births. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it's also confirmed by Prahlad Maharaj that merely by personal efforts or by the instructions of higher authorities, one cannot attain to this stage of devotional service. One must become blessed by the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee, who is completely freed from the contamination of material desires. In the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th chapter, verse 18, Sukadev Goswami also says to Maharaj Parikshit, my dear king, it is Lord Krishna, known as Mukunda, who is the eternal protector of the Pandavas and the Yadus. He is also a spiritual master and instructor in every respect. He is the only worshipable Lord, God for you. He is very dear and affectionate, and he is the director of all your activities, both individual and familial. And what's more, he sometimes carries out your orders as if he were your messenger. My dear king, how very fortunate you are, because for others, all these favors given to you by the Supreme Lord would not even be dreamt of. The purport to this verse is that the Lord easily offers liberation, but he rarely agrees to offer a soul devotional service. Because by devotional service, the Lord himself becomes purchased by the devotee. The happiness of becoming one with the Supreme. Srila Rupa Goswami says that if Brahmananda, for the happiness of becoming one, Brahmananda, for the happiness of becoming one with the Supreme is multiplied by 1 trillion fold, it is still cannot compare to an atomic fraction of the happiness derived from the ocean of devotional service. The happiness of becoming one with the Supreme. Srila Rupa Goswami says that if Brahmananda, or the happiness of becoming one with the Supreme, is multiplied by 1 trillion fold, still cannot compare to the atomic fraction of the happiness derived from the ocean of devotional service. In the Hari Bhakti, Sudodaya, Prahlad Maharaj, while satisfying Lord Nrsimhadev by his prayers, says, quote, my dear Lord of the universe, I am feeling transcendental pleasure in your presence and have become merged in the ocean of happiness. And I consider the happiness of Brahmananda to be no more than the water in the impression left by a cow's hoof in the earth, compared to this ocean of bliss. Similarly, it is confirmed in the Vavartha Dipika, Sridhar Swami's commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Quote, my dear Lord, some of the fortunate persons who are swimming in the ocean of your nectar of devotion and who are relishing the nectar of the narration of your pastimes certainly know ecstasies which immediately minimize the value of the happiness derived from religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Such a transcendental devotee regards any kind of happiness other than devotional service as no better than straw in the street. End quote. Attracting Krishna. Srila Rupa Goswami has stated that devotional service attracts even Krishna. Krishna attracts everyone, but devotional service attracts Krishna. The symbol of devotional service is in the highest degree, is Radharani. Krishna is called Madana Mohan, which means that he is so attractive that he can defeat the attraction of thousands of cupids. But Radharani is still more attractive, for she can even attract Krishna. Therefore, devotees call her Madana Mohana Mohini, the attractor of Cupid. To perform devotional service means to follow in the footsteps of Radharani. And devotees in Vrindavan put themselves under the care of Radharani in order to achieve perfection in their devotional service. In other words, devotional service is not an activity of the material world. It is directly under the control of Radharani. In Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed that the Mahatmas, or great souls, are under the protection of Daivi Prakriti, the internal energy Radharani. So, being directly under the control of the internal potency of Krishna, devotional service attracts even Krishna himself. The fact is corroborated by Krishna in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 14th chapter, verse 28, where he says, quote, "My dear Uddhava, you may know it from me that the attraction I feel for devotional service rendered by my devotees is not to be attained even by the performance of mystic yoga, philosophical speculation, ritualistic sacrifices, the study of the Vedanta, the practice of severe austerities, or the giving of everything in charity. These are, of course, very nice activities, but they are not as attractive to me as the transcendental loving service rendered by my devotees." Unquote. How Krishna becomes attracted by the devotional service of his devotees is described by Narada in Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 10th chapter, verses 48 and 49. There, Narada addresses King Yudhishthira Maharaj. King Yudhishthira, while the king is appreciating the glories of the character of Prahlad Maharaj. A devotee always appreciates the activities of other devotees. Yudhishthira Maharaj was appreciating the qualities of Prahlad Maharaj. And that is one symptom of a pure devotee. A pure devotee never thinks himself great. He always thinks that other devotees are greater than himself. The king was thinking Prahlad Maharaj is actually a devotee of the Lord, while I'm nothing. And while thinking this, he was addressed by Narada as follows. Quote, "My dear King Yudhishthira, you, the Pandava brothers, are the only fortunate people in this world. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has appeared on this planet and is presenting himself to you as an ordinary human being. Is always with you in all circumstances, is living with you and covering himself from the eyes of others. Others cannot understand that he is the Supreme Lord, but is still living with you as your cousin, as your friend, and even as your messenger. Therefore, you must know that nobody in this world is more fortunate than you." Unquote. In Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna appeared in his universal form, Arjuna prayed, "My dear Krishna, I thought of you as my cousin brother, and so I have shown disrespect to you in so many ways, calling you Krishna or friend. But you are so great that I could not understand." Unquote. So that was the position of the Pandavas. Although Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the greatest among all greats, he remained with those royal brothers, being attracted by their devotion, by their friendship, and by their love. That is the proof of how great this process of devotional service is. It can attract even the Supreme Personality of Godhead. God is great, but devotional service is greater than God. Because it attracts him. People who are not in devotional service can never understand what great value there is in rendering service to the Lord. End of the characteristic of pure devotional service. Chapter 2. The first stages of devotion. The three categories of devotional service which Srila Rupa Goswami describes in Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu are listed as devotional service in practice, devotional service in ecstasy, and devotional service in pure love of Godhead. There are many subheadings in each of these categories. Generally, it is understood that in the category of devotional service in practice, there are two different qualities. Devotional service in ecstasy has 4 qualities, and devotional service in pure love of Godhead has 6 qualities. These qualities will be explained by Srila Rupa Goswami later on. In this connection, Srila Rupa Goswami suggests that the person eligible for Krishna consciousness or devotional service can be classified by his particular taste. He says that devotional service is a continual process from one's previous life. No one can take to devotional service unless he has had some previous connection with it. For example, suppose in this life I practice devotional service to some extent, even though it is not 100% perfectly performed, whatever I have done will not be lost. In my next life, from the very point where I stop in this life, I shall begin again. In this way, there is always a continuity. But even if there is no continuity, if only by chance a person takes interest in a pure devotee's instruction, he can be accepted and can advance in devotional service. Anyway, for persons who have a natural taste for understanding books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service is easier than for those who are simply accustomed to mental speculation and argumentative processes. To support this statement, there are many authoritative assertions by the learned scholars of bygone ages. According to their general opinion, a person may become governed by certain convictions derived by his own arguments and decisions. Then another person who may be a great logician will nullify these conclusions and establish another thesis. In this way, the path of argument will never be safe or conclusive. Srimad Bhagavatam recommends, therefore, that one follow in the footsteps of the authorities. There is a general description of devotional service given by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. Previously, it has been stated that devotional service can be divided into 3 categories, namely devotional service in practice, devotional service in ecstasy, and devotional service in pure love of Godhead. Now, Srila Rupa Goswami proposes to describe devotional service in practice. Practice means employing our senses in some particular type of work. Therefore, devotional service in practice means utilizing our different sensory organs in service of Krishna, service to Krishna. Some of these senses are meant for acquiring knowledge, and some are meant for executing the conclusions of our thinking, feeling, and willing. So practice means employing both the mind and the senses in practical devotional service. This practice is not for developing something artificial. For example, a child learns or practices to walk. This walking is not unnatural. The walking capacity is there originally in the child, and simply by a little practice, he walks very nicely. Similarly, devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the natural instinct of every living entity. Even uncivilized men, like the Aborigines, offer their respectful obeisances to something wonderful exhibited by nature's law. And they appreciate that behind some wonderful exhibition or action, there is something supreme. So this consciousness, though lying dormant in those who are materially contaminated, is found in every living entity. And when purified, this is called Krishna consciousness. There are certain prescribed methods for employing our senses and mind in such a way that our dormant consciousness for loving Krishna will be invoked, as much as the child with a little practice can begin to walk. One who has no basic walking capacity cannot walk by practice. Similarly, Krishna consciousness cannot be aroused simply by practice. Actually, there is no such practice. When we wish to develop our innate capacity for devotional service, there are certain processes which, by our accepting and executing them, will cause that dormant capacity to be invoked. Such practice is called sadhana bhakti. Every living entity under the spell of material energy is held to be in an abnormal condition of madness. In Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.4, it is said, generally, the conditioned soul is mad because he is always engaged in activities which are the causes of bondage and suffering. The spirit soul, in his original condition, is joyful, blissful, eternal, and full of knowledge. Only by his implication in material activities has he become miserable, temporary, and full of ignorance. This is due to vikarma. Vikarma means actions which should not be done. Therefore, we must practice sadhana bhakti, which means to offer mangalarati, deity worship in the morning, to refrain from certain material activities, to offer obeisances to the spiritual master, and to follow many other rules and regulations which will be discussed here, one after another. These practices will help one become cured of madness, as a man's mental disease is cured by the directions of a psychiatrist. So this sadhana bhakti cures the conditioned soul of his madness under the spell of Maya, material illusion. Narada Muni mentions this sadhana bhakti in Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 1st chapter, verse 34, verse 32. He says there to King Yudhishthira, quote, "My dear king, one has to fix his mind on Krishna by any means," end quote. That is called Krishna consciousness. It is the duty of the Acharya, the spiritual master, to find the ways and means for his disciple to fix his mind on Krishna. That is the beginning of sadhana bhakti. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us an authorized program for this purpose, centered around the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. This chanting has so much power that it immediately attaches one to Krishna. That is the beginning of sadhana bhakti. Somehow or other, one has to fix his mind on Krishna. The great saint Ambarish Maharaj, although a responsible king, fixed his mind on Krishna. And similarly, anyone who tries to fix his mind in this way will very rapidly make progress in successfully reviving his original Krishna consciousness. Now, this sadhana bhakti or practice of devotional service may also be divided into two parts. The first part is called service according to regulative principles. One has to follow these different regulative principles by the order of the spiritual master, or on the strength of authoritative scriptures. And there can be no question of refusal. That is called Vaidhi or regulated. One has to do it without argument. Another part of sadhana bhakti is called Raganuga. Raganuga refers to the point at which, by following the regulative principles, one becomes a little more attached to Krishna and executes devotional service out of natural love. For example, a person engaged in devotional service may be ordered to rise early in the morning and offer arati, which is a form of deity worship. In the beginning, by the order of his spiritual master, one rises early in the morning and offers arati, but then he develops real attachment. When he gets this attachment, he automatically tries to decorate the deity and prepare different kinds of dresses and things of different plans to execute his devotional service nicely. Although it is within the category of practice, this offering of loving service is spontaneous. So the practice of devotional service, sadhana bhakti, can be divided into two parts, namely regulative and spontaneous. Rupa Goswami defines the first part of devotional practice, or Vaidhi Bhakti, as follows. When there is no attachment or no spontaneous loving service to the Lord, and one is engaged in the service of the Lord simply out of obedience to the order of the spiritual master or in pursuance of the scripture, such obligatory service is called Vaidhi Bhakti. These principles of Vaidhi Bhakti are also described in Srimad Bhagavatam 2nd Canto, 1st chapter, verse 5, where Sukadeva Goswami instructs the dying Maharaj Parikshit as to his course of action. Maharaj Parikshit met Sukadeva Goswami just a week before his death, and the king was perplexed as to what should be done before it was to pass on. Many other sages also arrived there, but no one could give him the proper direction. Sukadeva Goswami, however, gave this direction to him as follows. Quote, "My dear king, if you want to be fearless in meeting your death next week," where actually everyone is afraid at the point of death, "then you must immediately begin the process of hearing and chanting and remembering God." End quote. If one can chant and hear Hare Krishna and always remember Lord Krishna, then he is sure to become fearless of death, which may come at any moment. In the statements of Sukadeva Goswami, it is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Krishna. Therefore, Sukadeva recommends that one should always hear about Krishna. He does not recommend that one hear and chant about the demigods. The Mayavadis, impersonalists, say that one may chant any name, either that of Krishna or those of the demigods, and the result will be the same. But actually, this is not a fact. According to the authorized version of Srimad Bhagavatam, one has to hear and chant about Lord Vishnu or Krishna only. So Sukadeva Goswami has recommended to Parikshit Maharaj that in order to be fearless at death, one has to hear about, chant about, and remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna by all means. Hear about, chant about, and remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna by all means. He also mentions that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Sarvatma. Sarvatma means the super soul of everyone. Krishna is also mentioned as Ishvara, the supreme controller who is situated in everyone's heart. Therefore, if some way or other we become attached to Krishna, it will make us free from all danger. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that anyone who becomes a devotee of the Lord is never vanquished. Others, however, are always vanquished. Vanquished means that after getting this human form of life, a person does not come out of the entanglement of birth and death, and thus misses his golden opportunity. Such a person does not know where he is being thrown by the laws of nature. Suppose one does not develop Krishna consciousness in this human form of life. He will be thrown into the cycle of birth and death, involving 8,400,000 species of life. and the spiritual identity will remain lost. One does not know whether he is going to be a plant or a beast or a bird or something like that, because there are so many species of life. The recommendation of Rupa Goswami for reviving our original Krishna consciousness is that somehow or other, we should apply our minds to Krishna very seriously and thus also become fearless of death. After that, we do not know our destination, because we are completely under the control of the laws of nature. Only Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is controller over the laws of nature. Therefore, if we take shelter of Krishna seriously, there will be no fear of being thrown back into the cycle of so many species of life. A sincere devotee will surely be transferred to the abode of Krishna, as affirmed in Bhagavad Gita. In the Padma Purana also, the same process is advised. There it is said that one should always remember Lord Vishnu. This is called dhyana or meditation, always remembering Krishna. It is said that one has to meditate with his mind fixed upon Vishnu. Padma Purana recommends that one always fix his mind on the form of Vishnu by meditation and not forget him at any moment. And this state of consciousness is called samadhi or trance. We should always try to mold the activities of our lives in such a way that we'll constantly remember Vishnu or Krishna. That is Krishna consciousness. Whether one concentrates his mind on the four-handed form of Vishnu or on the form of two-handed Krishna, it is the same. The Padma Purana recommends somehow or other always think of Vishnu without forgetting him under any circumstances. Actually, this is the most basic of all regulative principles. For when there is an order from a superior about doing something, there is simultaneously a prohibition. When the order is that one should always remember Krishna, and the prohibition is that one should never forget him. Within this simple order and prohibition, all regulative principles are found complete. This regulative principle is applicable to all varnas and ashramas, the castes and the occupations of life. There are four varnas, namely the brahmanas, priests and intellectuals, the kshatriyas, warriors and statesmen, the vaishyas, businessmen and farmers, and the sudras, laborers and servants. There are also four standard ashramas, namely brahmacharya, student life, grihastha, householder, vanaprastha, retired, and sannyasa, renounced. The regulative principles are not only for the brahmachari, celibate students to follow, but are applicable for all. It doesn't matter whether one is a beginner or brahmachari or is very advanced, a sannyasi. The principle of remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly and not forgetting him at any moment is meant to be followed by everyone without fail. If this injunction is followed, then all other rules and regulations will automatically fall into line. All other rules and regulations should be treated as assistants or servants to this one basic principle. The injunction or rules and regulations and the resultant reactions are mentioned in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th chapter, verses 2 and 3. Chamasa Muni, one of the 9 sages who came to instruct King Nimi, addressed the king and said, quote, "The four social orders, namely the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Sudras, have come out of the different parts of the universal form of the Supreme Lord as follows. The Brahmanas have come out from the head. The Kshatriyas have come out from the arms. The Vaishyas have come out from the waist. And the Sudras have come out from the legs. Similarly, the Sannyasis have come out from the head, the Vanaprasthas from the arms, the Grihasthas from the waist, and the Brahmacharis from the legs." These different orders of society and grades of spiritual advancement are conceived in terms of qualification. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that the four social orders and the four spiritual orders are created by the Lord Himself in terms of different individual qualities. As the different parts of the body have different types of activities, so the social order and spiritual orders also have different types of activities in terms of qualification and position. The target of these activities, however, is always the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, quote, He is the Supreme Enjoyer, unquote. So whether one is a Brahmana or a Sudra, one has to satisfy the Supreme Lord by one's activities. This is also confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam by a verse which reads, quote, everyone must be engaged in his particular duty. But the perfection of such work should be tested by how far the Lord is satisfied with such activities. End quote. The injunction herein is that one has to act according to his position. And by such activities, one must either satisfy the Supreme Personality or else fall down from one's position. For example, a Brahmana who is born out of the head of the Lord has as his business to preach the transcendental Vedic sounds or Sabda Brahma. Because the Brahmana is the head, he has to preach the transcendental sound. And he also has to eat on behalf of the Supreme Lord. According to Vedic injunction, when a Brahmana eats, it is to be understood that the personality of Godhead is eating through him. It is not, however, that the Brahmana should simply eat on behalf of the Lord and not preach the message of Bhagavad Gita to the world. Actually, one who preaches the message of the Gita is very dear to Krishna, as is confirmed in the Gita itself. Such a preacher is factually a Brahmana, and thus by feeding him one feeds the Supreme Lord directly. Similarly, the Kshatriya has to protect people from the onslaughts of Maya. That is his duty. For example, as soon as Maharaj Parikshit saw a black man was attempting to kill a cow, he immediately took his sword, wanting to kill the black man, whose name was Kali. That is a Kshatriya's duty. Violence is required in order to give protection. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna directly gave his order to Arjuna to commit violence on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, just to give protection to the people in general. The Vaishyas are meant for producing agricultural products, trading them and distributing them. And the working class or Sudras are those who haven't the intelligence of the Brahmanas or the Kshatriyas or the Vaishyas, and therefore they are meant to help these higher classes by bodily labor. In this way, there is full cooperation and spiritual advancement among the different orders of society. And when there is no such cooperation, the members of society will fall down. That is the present position in the Kali Yuga, this age of quarrel. Nobody is doing his duty, and everyone is simply puffed up by calling himself a Brahmana, intellectual, or a Kshatriya, soldier or statesman. But actually, such people are without status. They are out of touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead because they are not Krishna conscious. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement is intended to set the whole of human society in proper condition, so that everyone will be happy and take profit from developing Krishna consciousness. Lord Sri Krishna instructed Uddhava that by following the injunctions of the social and spiritual orders of human society, one can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as a result of such satisfaction, the whole society gets all the necessities of life amply and without difficulty. This is because, after all, the Supreme Personality of Godhead maintains all other living entities. If the whole society performs its respective duties and remains in Krishna consciousness, there's no doubt that all of its members will live very peacefully and happily. Without wanting the necessities of life, the whole world will be turned into Vaikuntha, a spiritual abode, even without being transferred to the kingdom of God. By following the injunctions of Srimad Bhagavatam and prosecuting the duties of Krishna consciousness, all human society will be happy in all respects. There is a similar statement by Sri Krishna himself to Uddhava in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 27th chapter, verse 49. The Lord says there, quote, "My dear Uddhava, all persons are engaged in activities, whether those indicated in the revealed scriptures or ordinary worldly activities. If by the result of either of such activities they worship me in Krishna consciousness, then automatically they become very happy within this world as well as in the next. Of this there is no doubt." Unquote. We can conclude from this statement by Krishna that activities in Krishna consciousness will give everyone all perfection in all desires. Thus, the Krishna consciousness movement is so nice that there is no need of even designating oneself Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasi. Let everyone be engaged in whatever occupation he now has. Simply let him worship Lord Krishna by the result of his activities in Krishna consciousness. That will adjust the whole situation, and everyone will be happy and peaceful within this world. In the Narada Pancharatra, the regulative principles of devotional service are described as follows. Quote, "Any activities sanctioned in the revealed scriptures and aiming at the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are accepted by saintly teachers as regulative principles of devotional service. If one regularly executes such service under the Supreme Personality of Godhead under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master, then gradually he rises to the platform of serving in pure love of God." End of chapter 2, the first stages of devotion. Chapter 3, eligibility of the candidate for accepting devotional service. On account of his association with Mahatmas or great souls, 100% in the devotional service of the Lord, one may attain a little bit of attraction for Sri Krishna. But at the same time, one may remain very much attached to fruitive activities and material sense enjoyment, and not be prepared to undergo the different types of renunciation. Such a person, if he has unflinching attraction to Krishna, becomes an eligible candidate for discharging devotional service. Let me repeat that paragraph again. On account of his association with Mahatmas or great souls, 100% in the devotional service of the Lord, one may attain a little bit of attraction for Krishna, for Sri Krishna. But at the same time, one may remain very much attached to fruitive activities and material sense enjoyment, and not be prepared to undergo the different types of renunciation. Such a person, if he has unflinching attraction to Krishna, becomes an eligible candidate for discharging devotional service. This attraction for Krishna consciousness in association with pure devotees is the sign of great fortune. It is confirmed by Lord Chaitanya that only the fortunate persons, by the mercy of both the bona fide spiritual master and Krishna, will get the seed of devotional service. In this connection, Lord Krishna says in Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 20th chapter, verse 8. My dear Uddhava, only by exceptional fortune does someone become attracted to me. And even if one is not completely detached from creative activities or is not completely attached to devotional service, such service is quickly effective. Devotees may be divided into three classes. The devotee in the first or uppermost class is described as follows. He is very expert in the study of relevant scriptures and is also expert in putting forward arguments in terms of those scriptures. He can very nicely present conclusions with perfect discretion and can consider the ways of devotional service in a decisive way. He understands perfectly that the ultimate goal of life is to attain to the transcendental loving service of Krishna. And he knows that Krishna is the only object of worship and love. This first-class devotee is one who has strictly followed the rules and regulations under the training of a bona fide spiritual master and has sincerely obeyed him in accord with revealed scriptures. Thus, being fully trained to preach and become a spiritual master himself, he is considered first class. The first class devotee never deviates from the principles of higher authority, and he attains firm faith in the scriptures by understanding all reason and arguments. When we speak of arguments and reasons, it means arguments and reason on the basis of revealed scriptures. The first-class devotee is not interested in dry speculative methods meant for wasting time. In other words, one who has attained a mature determination in the matter of devotional service can be accepted as the first-class devotee. The second-class devotee has been defined by the following symptoms. He is not very expert in arguing under strength of revealed scripture, but he has firm faith in the objective. The purport of this description is that the second-class devotee has firm faith in the procedure of devotional service unto Krishna, but he may sometimes fail to offer arguments and decisions on the strength of revealed scriptures to an opposing body. But at the same time, is still undaunted within himself as to his decision that Krishna is the supreme object of worship. The neophyte or third-class devotee is one whose faith is not strong and who at the same time does not recognize the decision of the revealed scripture. The neophyte faith can be changed by someone else with strong arguments or by an opposite decision. Unlike the second-class devotee, who also cannot put forward arguments and evidences from the scriptures, but still has all faith in the objective, the neophyte has no firm faith in the objective. That is called the neophyte devotee. Further classification of the neophyte devotee is made in the Bhagavad Gita. It is stated there that four classes of men, namely those who are distressed, those who are in need of money, those who are inquisitive, and those who are wise, begin devotional service and come to the Lord for relief in the matter of their respective self-satisfaction. They go into some place of worship and pray to God for mitigation of material distress or for some economic development or to satisfy their inquisitiveness. And a wise man who simply realizes the greatness of God is also counted among the neophytes. Such beginners can be elevated to the second class or first class platform if they associate with pure devotees. An example of the neophyte class is Maharaj Dhruva. He was in need of his father's kingdom and therefore engaged himself in devotional service to the Lord. Then in the end, when he was completely purified, he declined to accept any material benediction from the Lord. Similarly, Gajendra was distressed and prayed to Krishna for protection, after which he became a pure devotee. Similarly, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sananda, and Sanat Kumara were all in the category of wise, saintly persons, and they were also attracted by devotional service. A similar thing happened to the assemblage in the Naimisaranya forest, headed by the sage Saunaka. They were inquisitive and were always asking Sutta Goswami about Krishna. Thus, they achieved the association of a pure devotee and became pure devotees themselves. So that is the way of elevating oneself. In whatever condition one may be, if he is fortunate enough to associate with pure devotees, then very quickly he is elevated to the second class or first class platforms. These four types of devotees who have been described in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita These four types of devotees who have been described in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and they have all been accepted as pious. These four types of devotees have been described in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and they have all been accepted as pious. Without becoming pious, no one can come to devotional service. It is explained in Bhagavad Gita that only one who has continually executed pious activities and whose sinful reactions in life have completely stopped can take to Krishna consciousness. Others cannot. The neophyte devotees are classified into 4 groups: the distressed, those in need of money, the inquisitive, and the wise. According to their degree of pious activities, the neophyte devotees are classified into 4 groups: the distressed, those in need of money, the inquisitive, and the wise, according to their degree of pious activities. Without pious activities, if a man is in a distressed condition, he becomes an agnostic, a communist, or something like that. Because he does not firmly believe in God, he thinks that he can adjust his distressed condition by totally disbelieving in him. Lord Krishna, however, has explained in the Gita that out of these 4 types of neophytes, the one who is wise is very dear to him. Because a wise man, if he is attached to Krishna, Lord Krishna, however, has explained in the Gita that out of these 4 types of neophytes, the one who is wise is very dear to him. Because a wise man, if he is attached to Krishna, is not seeking an exchange of material benefits. A wise man who becomes attached to Krishna does not want any return from him, either in the form of relieving stress or in gaining money. This means that from the very beginning, his basic principle of attachment to Krishna is more or less love. Furthermore, due to his wisdom and study of Shastra and scriptures, he can also understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that after many, many births, when one becomes actually wise, he surrenders unto Vasudeva, knowing perfectly well that Krishna Vasudeva is the origin and cause of all causes. Therefore, he sticks to the lotus feet of Krishna and gradually develops love for him. Although such a wise man is very dear to Krishna, the others are also accepted as very magnanimous. Because even though they are distressed or in need of money, or they have come to Krishna for satisfaction, let me go back. Although such a wise man is very dear to Krishna, the others are also accepted as very magnanimous, because even though they are distressed or in need of money, they have come to Krishna for satisfaction. Thus, they are accepted as liberal, broad-minded Mahatmas. Without being elevated to the position of a Jnani or wise man, one cannot stick to the principle of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The less intelligent, or those whose intelligence has been taken away by the spell of Maya, are attached to different demigods on account of the influence of the modes of nature. The wise man is he who has thoroughly understood that he is spirit soul and not simply a body. Because he realizes that he is spirit and Krishna is the supreme spirit, he knows that his intimate relationship should be with Krishna, not with his body. The distressed and the man in want of money are in the material concept of life, because distress and need of money are both in relationship with this body. One who is inquisitive may be a little above this distressed and the man in need of money, but still he is on the material platform. But a wise man who seeks Krishna knows perfectly well that he is spirit soul, or Brahman, and that Krishna is the supreme spirit soul, or Para-Brahman. He knows that the spirit soul, being subordinate or finite, should always dovetail himself with the infinite and supreme soul, Krishna. That is the relationship of the wise man with Krishna. It can be concluded that a person who is freed from the bodily concept of life is an eligible candidate for pure devotional service. It is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that after Brahman realization, when one is freed from material anxieties and can see every living entity on an equal level, he is eligible to enter into devotional service. As stated before, there are three kinds of happiness: material, spiritual, and devotional. Devotional service and the happiness due to its execution are not possible as long as one is materially affected. If someone has desire for material enjoyment or for becoming one with the Supreme, these are both considered material concepts. Because the impersonalists cannot appreciate the spiritual happiness of association and the exchange of loving affairs with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, their ultimate goal is to become one with the Supreme Lord. This concept is simply an extension of the material idea. In the material world, everyone is trying to be the topmost headman among all his fellow men and neighbors, either communally, socially, or nationally. Everyone is competing to be greater than all others in the material concept of life. This greatness can be extended to the unlimited, so that one actually wants to become one with the greatest of all, the Supreme Lord. This is also a material concept, although maybe a little more advanced. However, the perfect spiritual concept of life is complete knowledge of one's constitutional position, in which one knows enough to dovetail himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. One must know that he is finite and the Lord is infinite. Thus, it is not possible to actually become one with the Lord, even if one aspires for this. It is simply not possible. Therefore, anyone who has any desire or aspiration for satisfying his senses by becoming more and more important, either in the material sense or in the spiritual sense, cannot actually relish the really sweet taste of devotional service. Srila Rupa Goswami has therefore compared possessing this bhukti or material with and mukti, liberation. Srila Rupa Goswami has therefore compared possessing these bhukti, material, or mukti liberation desires with being influenced by the black art of a witch. In both cases, one is in trouble. Bhukti means material enjoyment, and mukti means to become freed from material anxiety and to become one with the Lord. These desires are compared to being haunted by ghosts and witches. Because while these aspirations for material enjoyment and spiritual ones with the Supreme remain, no one can relish the actual transcendental taste of devotional service. A pure devotee never cares for liberation. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prayed to Krishna, "My dear son of Nanda, I do not want any material happiness in the shape of many followers, nor immense opulence and wealth, nor any beautiful wife, nor do I want cessation from material existence. I may take birth many times, one after another, but what I pray from you is that my devotion unto you may always remain unflinching." The attention of a pure devotee is so much attracted to glorification of the Lord's pastime, name, qualities, forms, etc., that the devotee does not care for mukti. Sri Bilbamangal Thakur has said, quote, "If I am engaged in devotional service unto you, my dear Lord, then very easily can I perceive your presence everywhere. And as far as liberation is concerned, I think liberation stands at my door with folded hands, waiting to serve me. To pure devotees, therefore, liberation and spiritual emancipation are not very important things. In this connection, in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 25, verse 36, Kapila Dev has advised his mother, Devahuti, as follows: "My dear mother, my pure devotees are charmed by seeing my different forms, the beauty of my face, the structure of my body, so enchanting. My laughing, my pastimes, and my glance appear to them so beautiful that their minds are always absorbed in thoughts of me, and their lives are dedicated fully unto me. Although such people do not desire any kind of liberation or any kind of material happiness, still I give them a place among my associates in the Supreme Abode." This evidence from Srimad Bhagavatam gives assurance to the pure devotee that being elevated to association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this evidence from Srimad Bhagavatam gives assurance to the pure devotee of being elevated to association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Rupa Goswami remarks in this connection that one who is actually attracted by the beauty of the lotus feet of Sri Krishna for his service, and his heart by such attraction is always full with transcendental bliss, will naturally never aspire after the liberation which is so valuable to the impersonalists. A similar passage is also there in the third canto, fourth chapter, verse 15 of the same book, wherein Uddhava addresses Lord Krishna and said, quote, "My dear Lord, for persons who are engaged in your transcendental loving service, there is nothing worth obtaining from religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation. Although happiness from these different sources can be very easily had by them. In spite of such facilities, my dear Lord, I do not aspire to achieve any such results. My only prayer is that I may have unflinching faith and devotion unto your lotus feet." A similar passage appears in the third canto, 25th chapter, verse 34, wherein Kapila Dev instructs his mother and says, quote, "My dear mother, devotees whose hearts are always filled in the service of my lotus feet and who are prepared to do anything for my satisfaction, especially those fortunate souls, those fortunate devotees who assemble together to understand my qualities, pastimes, and form, and thus glorify me congregationally and derive transcendental pleasure therefrom, never desire to become one with me. And what to speak of becoming one with me if they are offered a post like me in my abode, or opulence like mine, or even personal association with me with similar bodily features, they refuse to accept, because they are satisfied simply by being engaged in my devotional service. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 9th chapter, verse 10, King Dhruva says, my dear Lord, the transcendental pleasure derived by meditation upon your lotus feet, which is enjoyed by the pure devotees, cannot be approached by the transcendental pleasure derived by the impersonalists through self-realization. So how can the fruitive workers who at most can aspire to promotion to the higher planetary system, higher heavenly planets, understand you? And how can they be described as enjoying a happiness similar to devotees' happiness? I'll repeat this again. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 9th chapter, verse 10, King Dhruva says, my dear Lord, the transcendental pleasure derived by meditation upon your lotus feet, which is enjoyed by the pure devotees, cannot be approached by the transcendental pleasure derived by the impersonalists through self-realization. So how can the creative workers, who at most can aspire to promotion to the higher heavenly planets, understand you? And how can they be described as enjoying a happiness similar to the devotees' happiness? End of chapter 3, eligibility of the candidate. So we'll end here for today. Nectar devotion ki jai. Hare Krishna.